thank you. With that, it indicates it's 8:30, so we'll call the meeting of the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners Saturday, January 25th, 2020 to order. Commissioner Cavilla, would you please lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I had the wrong one up.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have the roll of the commission called, please.
Chairman Johnston.
Here.
Vice Chairwoman East. Commissioner Almberg. Commissioner Barnes. Commissioner Cavilla. Commissioner Hutz. Commissioner Keel. Commissioner Lynch. Commissioner Valentine.
Starting in Elko, I'm going to assume the Elko cab representative there, but could you please confirm that or know who is there on behalf of the cabs?
Giannoni, Elko cab.
Thank you. Any cab members present in Reno?
Yes, Stevenson, Washoe.
Thank you. And cab members here present in Las Vegas?
Chief, Carson City.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Thank you all. We will go on to agenda 12, approval of agenda. Chairman, for possible action, the commission will review the agenda and may take action to approve the agenda. The commission may remove items from the agenda, continue items for consideration, or take items out of order. Any comments on the agenda? It's my understanding that agenda item 8B, Commission General Regulation 8A, owner compensation tags, LCB file number 03-19, that we have not received that back from LCB, and so that will have to be postponed until the next meeting, assuming we get that back from LCB. Okay. So we can just remove that from this agenda. Any other comments or questions on the agenda? Seeing none as an action item, any comments on the agenda from Elko?
No.
Thank you. Any comments on the agenda in Reno?
No comments in Reno, Mr. Thank you.
Thank you. Any public comment on the agenda here in Las Vegas? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion or a motion. Commissioner McNinch.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented, with the exception of be deferred to another meeting.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner McNinch, seconded by Vice Chair to approve the agenda as presented, with the exception that agenda 18B will be agenda for a subsequent commission meeting. Everyone clear on the motion? In favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Carries 9-0. With that, we'll move on to agenda item 13. Member item announcements and correspondence. Chairman Johnston and Secretary Wasley. Informational. Commissioners may present emergent items. No action may be taken by the committee. Any item requiring commission action may be scheduled for the commission agenda. The commission will review and may discuss sent and received commission since the regular meeting and may provide copies for the exhibit file. Commissioners may provide hard copies of their correspondence for the written record. Correspondence sent or received by Secretary Wasley may also be discussed. I did receive, I believe, 1 or 2 emails last night. I forwarded those on to the department. They were related to an agenda item for the department. So, any other member items or announcements? Commissioner Hutz.
Yes, I did receive most of the bear correspondence we were all copied on. I did receive maybe 3 to 5 separate email that I have, and I'm forwarding those over to the department.
Okay, Thank you. Any other member items or announcements? Secretary, do you have any?
I believe everything the department received and shared with the commission, as mentioned yesterday. I did receive one new email just from a very sad elderly gentleman from California that was having some difficulty in filling out his hunter card, and he sent a great email about all the support he received from NDOW staff. So I just fresh on my inbox, and I thought I'd share that. I'll share that with the commission. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other member items or correspondence, we'll close agenda item 13 and move on to agenda item 14. County advisory boards to manage wildlife member items information. Members may present emergent items. No action may be taken by the commission. Any item or commission action will be scheduled on a future commission agenda. Any tab items in Elko?
No cab items in Elko.
Thank you, Mr. Any cab items in Reno?
No in Reno, thank you.
Thank you. Any cab items in Las Vegas?
Ferguson from Lander County Cab. First of all, I'd like to thank you guys for moving the sheep out of Lander County. It's a good thing. I hope for places because the herd's doing great. We're trying to get the youth hunt on in Lander County for antelope, and we haven't received anything about a TAC meeting or anything like that. We would like to know where the status is at. That's all I got.
Thank you. Any additional cab items? Seeing none, we'll close item 14 and move on to agenda item 15, Upper Naval Range and Training Center and Nevada Test and Training Range, Habitat Division Administrator Janae. Informational. The department provided an update regarding the legislative and environmental impact statements, status, and timeline commission consideration of congressional correspondence relative to wildlife impact. Mr. Janae.
Chairman, members of the commission, if you don't mind, I'll get it from over here. It's a little easier to see versus the screen podium. So
Certainly fine with me.
all right, thank you very much. So I'm just here to give you an update on naval or the Nellis Test and Training Range, as well as Fallon Range and Training Complex. Both of these are legislative.
Can I just a second? You have a PowerPoint? And,
Yes.
and the reason is it's not up on our screen, so, and I am not the person to ask as to advance that technology. Test and training range.
I think our screen's turned off.
When in doubt, turn it off and try it back on. There it goes.
Right on.
Okay, about that, Mr. Janae, we just needed to turn on our screen, so.
No problem. We've solved that technical difficulty. So yeah, just going to give you an update on the legislative EISs that both of these test and ranges are going through. As I've given you updates in the past, these are slated for a 2021 Defense Authorization Act back in D.C. They are varying states process. The first one I wanted to give you an update on is Nellis Training Range. As far as the legislative EIS process, it is finalized. It is at the end of the process. It's now back in the bill being drafted. Conversations being had for the fall Defense Authorization Act. The biggest update on this is recently the Nevada Nation submitted a act called the Desert Wildlife Refuge and Nevada Test and Training Range Withdrawal and Enforcement Act. This on the screen is a map of the proposal. What we're looking at is it would change the withdrawal within the Navy. It would give them the 3 million acres, 387 identified purple, and then it would add 8 additional wilderness areas that would be of management. So kind of a pushback on the process that the Air Force had gone through and their findings coming out of their EIS. And it was, I would say, trying to push a more collaborative solution. Specifically, as I mentioned, the Nevada delegation that was involved in this, Senators Cortez Masto and Rosen, Representatives Horsford, Titus, Amadei, and Lee. The act would look to, maintain the primary jurisdiction of the refuge with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife for transferring primary jurisdiction to the Navy. Extend withdrawal on the Nevada Test and Training Range for 20 years. It would allow the Air Force, in consultation with DOI, to place up to 15 threat emitters. That was one of the key pieces they needed buffers for in their proposal. And it provides a buffer on the boundary to prevent the unintended trespass. This is kind of the meat of it, is it establishes the authority for U.S. Air Force to provide mitigation payments for fish and wildlife to offset impacts to the land. It reserves public access and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service jurisdiction east of the historic Alamo Old Corn Road in the dry lake bed. And then, as I previously mentioned, the 4 wilderness on lands co-managed by Air Force and Fish and Wildlife Service would comprise 645,998 acres. It's basically, on this map, that would be that blue portion to the northwest. The other 4 wilderness areas on lands managed by Fish and Wildlife would comprise 664,108 acres. As this was developed, we weren't consulted. I know that many sportsmen's groups, I don't believe there was much involvement there. I think there's probably some discussions that are occurring. But I just wanted to give you an update. This is a proposal, that an act that was a congressional delegation that is in contrast to the Air Force's proposal out of their EIS. So I don't know how this will play out back in DC, but definitely to give you an update. As far as the Naval Air Station, Fallon Naval Air Station, it is ending. That process is coming to the end. You can see highlighted in yellow, the final EIS was recently released in January, and a 30-day public review is coming to an end on February 8th. So that opportunity to submit letters and get something on the record is quickly coming to an end. As you recall, Fallon Naval Air Station, their preferred alternative is highlighted here on the map. It's shift 17, you can see at the bottom right-hand corner. It shifted that from the original proposal, which helped save the Sand Spring range, and it didn't lead to any results on Route 361. But because of that shift in bombing protection zones, safety protection zone does require a State Route 361 reroute. One of the big things was making sure that we maintained a managed access program in Dixie Valley and B-17 special land management overlay, thing that was brought, and those special land management overlay areas was key that are still underneath BLM jurisdiction. So again, you've seen this multiple times. Alternative 3, like I say, shifted off the savings range. It had benefits to sheep herds, guzzlers, additional sheep herds in Stillwater and Alpine range impacted but accessible. Restricted access is totally reliant on agreements with the Navy, which is not developed, but we have got to a place where we have a finalized draft that will be released in the ES that will be part of that recorded decision. So again, just going over our concerns so that they're fresh in your mind should any action warranted to provide comment. The access issue for NDOW management and sportsmen, we were concerned because over years we've invested over $1.5 million in water developments and transplants. Those restricted hunts, worst case scenario, would make impacts to NDOW's ability to maintain water developments and the recreational pursuits on those lands. Our recommendation, was that the Navy needed to finalize access, and we needed assurances for NDOW and sportsman access, and try to maintain as much flexibility as given that it is a bombing range and safety zones that were incorporated. Additionally, we were looking to try to get some campsites that were more access, that we actually have currently is not available, and then looking at annual review date or adaptive management. And we do have that. We got that into that agreement draft because it would be decisional to sign that before the record decision, and it will be an attachment. And at this point, we believe we're in a good place on access, but continuing to highlight that we can, in every letter we write, to push and make sure that that's part of this process. Wildfire and wildfire rehabilitation, we're very concerned. We've documented impacts from flares and activity on the training range. So knowing that there's a fair amount of grass out there, we want to make sure that they're dealing with the risk and that they're trying to create, hopefully, resources to help take care of their any strikes that occur on their lands, and if not, setting up agreements with, say, NDF and BLM, and so making sure that there is funding not only for wildfire management but also for rehabilitation. So we've for wildfire management plan for the prevention, suppression, and rehabilitation, and we continue to push for funding to support those actions. Another concern I have that was common to U.S. Air Force and Nellis down here was the insufficient mitigation of the impacts for wildlife. The impacts we've documented, some of them aren't fully laid out or will be fully realized. Should wildfire occur, we don't look like. So we continue to push for mitigation and offsets to impacts to wildlife. Know that their current integrated natural resource management plan process that they tried to funding through it's a competitive process, so it's not always clear as to what the annual funding will be per year. So we'd like to see something that's more dedicated mitigation that is created in a wildlife working group with partners and conservation organizations to drive those funds and push them to the right location. But the piece is making sure that there's a fund to help with those offsets. So again, looking at military land in Nevada, currently, or the stat is $70.8 million. Currently, DOE and DOD own $4.2 million, that's percent of Nevada, with the proposed additions of 182,722 acres that takes them to the third largest land manager in the state, only slightly behind U.S. Forest Service, just 540,000 acres greater than DOD and DOE, or U.S. Forest Service. So with that, that is my update. And like I say, going back, is that February 8th 30-day public review period is coming quickly. Stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Janek. If I heard you correctly, with respect to the legislation that was proposed for the Nevada training range, the department was not consulted in putting that legislative package together?
That is true, sir. We were not consulted.
So have you had the opportunity to look at what is proposed in that legislation? And does the department have a position on whether it seems to me it's some sort of composition about a delegation of recognizing the needs of the Air Force, but trying to address the concerns of various stakeholders. The department's view on the legislation that it addresses some of the issues, doesn't address all the issues, or don't know yet?
I would say without knowing all the entries, we see the map, we react. We don't know all of it, so there's probably some of the offsets, especially, on that eastern side of the range, that we're going to be further expansion and take away from the refuge and go into the Air Force test and training range. I think that could be in. At this time, we really don't know the details enough to really, make a judgment. But I know that, there are many other parties that are pushing for comment and, input into this as well.
And I'm sure, as we all know, with the legislative process, what is introduced is not necessarily what comes out of the legislative process. I guess the other question would be, with the timelines and various status of these two issues, what further should this committee be doing?
Chairman, if I asked you, the commission has provided comment letters on these, and I know that this timeline, you'd ask me and see when an opportunity for comment was, and this 30 public review, that last opportunity for public comment, does end February 8th of this year. So if you wish to provide some type of correspondence, we'd need that's in 8th.
Any other questions for Commission, or sorry, for Mr. Commissioner Hubbs?
So I'm looking over this map. I guess I'm just curious. I think the focus is on this Desert National Wildlife Refuge in particular, right? Down here at the bottom.
Say that again.
Is one of our concerns about National Wildlife Refuge and access? I'm looking. You're saying the eastern side is the green area.
Yeah. So if you would hold 1 second, I'll take you back to the previous map and I can help you better understand. So look here, that eastern blue edge, that was going to be a buffer expansion of 227 acres that was going to go into military jurisdiction. It would come a refuge, and so limited access, limited opportunity. And I'm going to skip back to the other one. In this proposal, what you would see is that would go under authorization or jurisdiction of service instead of military, and it would be wilderness area. So there would still be access allowed.
In the teal colored area.
Sorry, I'm looking to the green.
The green area.
The green is that eastern edge. That's the difference.
It seems like a fairly substantial area of land, and you're saying that they have it not coordinated with at all in the planning.
No, not at this time.
So, if we've written 2 letters in the past, I'm assuming we've asked to coordinate with. Is that what?
So
Can we go back to what our letters inform them of, so we have an idea?
Yes, to answer your question, is the proposal in view as the act. And so that was the congressional delegation that drafted this proposal. And so what I'm saying is in this draft of that act, we were not consulted by the delegation, having any input into that process. Not saying anything of it. It helps deal with some of the that was in the original proposal. And in that original proposal that I illustrate here, we did have plenty of comment. We did push to try to find solutions within this proposal that was submitted and had a record of decision through the ES.
So the record of decision stated still limited access. So anything we put in not very much heeded to is
Yes.
what you're saying.
Yes.
And when we wrote the letter, did we just, was it a comment, or did we actually write our senators and our representatives that are working on Excel?
We supplied the comment to DOD, or DOD, but to the Air Force at that time. Not supply or copy to delegation, but they were definitely, I would say that our letters were pretty well distributed to other parts, and that other people had seen our comment concerns. And we were in the process. There were many meetings that we had in, many opportunities, but still did not stick.
Can you go back to the map that shows the proposed legislation? Is the area green hash going, that entire area going to be designated as wilderness if the legislation as proposed was adopted, or if sheep range wilderness and there's a number of acres, the Las Vegas range wilderness, and there's another one at the bottom. My bifocals aren't quite like read them. Or progressive lenses. But in any event, is the entire hash going to be wilderness then?
Yeah, that when you look, if you can see the hash in the green, that would, if you look over to the left, on the left, that would be proposed wilderness, and that would be under Fish and Wildlife Service jurisdiction. But you can see that there are cherry stem roads. That's when you see those little green cutouts, those are the cherry stem roads. Then anywhere where that hash in.
That would still allow for motorized access into the wilderness on those roads.
That is my understanding.
Okay, because when I hear of talking about access and that, certainly a wilderness designation affects access in a manner, in certain more than others, depending upon age, access, horses, things like that. So that was the reason for my question.
You bet. It's time to help caveat that comment is that we don't have the shape files, so we do not have the ability to reference access to evaluate which roads are in those cherry stems. So
sorry.
So if we were going to give you a more thorough evaluation of that, that's what we would need. So right now we've seen nothing more than the map that's in front of you.
So we have offered some public comment on both. The public comment period for the Fallon It's closing in February. After that, then there's some sort of decision from the Navy. They then go to Congress and has to get approved by Congress. And so it seems to me once we have the decision from the Navy, whatever point in time it is, that would be the final time that we can comment on that decision, both in comments on connection with our congressional delegation.
This 3-day review that is ending on February 8th is the last in the process to public comment. It is they will take, they've laid out their proposed action. They have, in this final IS public release, they've laid out what they're going to do. This is the last opportunity for the public to then put in to their proposed decision. They'll take those comments, review them, and then go forward with a record or a decision, documented decision, which will go into helping form that congressional decision that will go into the Act, Defense Authorization Act, in the fall of 2020.
Yeah, I guess my question was just that once you have the decision from the Navy foreclosed and contacting members of Congress with respect to whether or not that decision should be approved.
Absolutely. I apologize for the confusion. That is the game after the decision, is that there isn't an opportunity through the process, but it would have to go to much the same as Nellis, go to the congressional conversation.
Okay. Secretary Wasley, comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to provide that clarification. There's formal public comment, a process that adds the comment to the public record, which still an opportunity to comment informally and work directly with legislators. I also want to provide just kind of a little clarification on Nellis, where we had the course that their alternative was the selected preferred alternative that they selected was ask for everything they wanted. It was best case scenario. This is what we want. The other alternative were far from what they desired. So there wasn't anything else on the table to drive the discussion or negotiation. The congressional delegation put forward this idea that's screens right now, representing that lower, the southeast portion of that. Neither of those scenarios are probably ideal, but now there are two starting points to have the discussion and perhaps negotiate, some of which may happen at the congressional level outside of that public comment, formal public comment through me. But this provides an alternative that's on the table. So that a congressional delegation alternative and the DOD alternative as two starting points to begin to have productive dialogue. We as an agency have largely been at arm's length in being consulted and being the alternative as Habitat Division Administrator Janae.
Any other questions?
I have one comment too. I've spent a lot of time out here in the National Wildlife Refuge on the section controlled by the Force currently, which is the teal section and the green section. The green section right now is controlled currently by the Desert National Wildlife Refuge. It's basically controlled similar to the wilderness areas. It doesn't change as far as access goes in that the land use that's currently out there. I mean, I haven't, but I can't imagine the land use out there is already limited, kind of extremely limited, and it's pretty going to be the same. So I do have some background out there. So.
Thank you. Commissioner McNinch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, my initial, if I'm understanding it, I mean, this is provides that opportunity to have conversation we didn't have before, number one. And it, you push back. I can see it's a definitely a concept. What else do you get? It's kind of an all or nothing otherwise. You're going to lose your ability to do any of this, or have restricted access, which according to Commissioner Cavilla is probably not, not a real significant change anyway. So we try to we engage at some level and get the details. Find some of the finer details that we might be interested in and address accordingly. But I hope that we we're not going to get in a comment by the ES stuff, but certainly the beyond that with professional education, I think we should engage with them and continue to have a dialogue so that we can get behind whatever they're proposing, because the alternative is no access, it sounds like.
Thank you for the comment. And I did put here, you can see the web link to, this is on Cortez Mills website, but if you want to see the actual bill language for the Nellis, you could see that there.
Any other questions? I think what I'd like to do is, this is an informational item, but I'd like to have this as kind of a continuing or standing agenda item. Get an update on both, but we get it for possible action for this commission to then do whatever it may or may not decide to do in terms of the congressional delegation, other stakeholders, so that we can continue to be updated and have the opportunity to then formulate some sort of action deemed appropriate upon hearing from the public and consideration by the members of the commission. If we do that, if that's not too much burden on the... Okay, question, Commissioner Hubbs?
For consistency's sake, though, shouldn't we, during this last 30-day period, I guess I just don't want it to come back that we did nothing during that period of time. If we comment and then later on we'll be working with congressional delegation, we have a consistent message that we have providing each time.
I think we submitted our letter, and that my only other concern is that this being agendized as an informational item, I do not believe we can take formal action. A designated commissioner draft a letter and submit it. I know we've submitted letters a while ago. I worked with Mr. Janae to do that. I feel that our positions have been well laid out with respect to the alternatives and the items we addressed. And so without those being addressed, I think we are, whatever we see out, decision from you, we'd be able to say these were our concerns then, there are concerns now, that's where we get. But I can't formulate a real good response until we have a decision from the Navy in terms of what they're going to do, because we're waiting for that final decision after this process.
And to throw the idea out and maybe get some clarification, Dag Burkett, there's the possibility if the chair wanted to write that letter on behalf of the chair without the act of the commission, just reiterate your point to the record. It would be basically recycle. Again, it's what we often do. The issues haven't changed. The proposal is only modified, and even past comments might be still relevant.
I would be concerned that as this is an informational item and the ability under the open meeting law rules to take action here, that the commission who is acting in this position as a commissioner for this commission do so. I was thinking about this as we're discussing it. The Attorney General hasn't formally taken a position on this. Possibly the Attorney General's office would take this up, and we could work through those mechanisms to at least some support for the position of this commission. Just my thought. That would have to work with people within our office. higher designations than me, but we push it.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I trust the department will be continuing to comment. And when the department comments, that would also be in line with directions and comments and direction received and concerns of the commission as well that have been set out in many meetings.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. With that, I think we can, if there's further questions, we can close agenda item 15 and move on to agenda item 16. Request for up to 30 pygmy rabbits by the Washington Department of Wildlife, Secretary Wasley, and Diversity Division Administrator Newmark for possible action. The Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife has requested up to 30 pygmy rabbits from Nevada during late winter or spring 2020 to augment their restoration efforts. Pygmy rabbits from Nevada are similar genetically to the Colombian base pygmy rabbits, and these rabbits would be used to augment their population. The commission may vote to endorse this request. Ms. Secretary Wasley first, or Ms. Newmark?
I'll provide just a quick overview on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just kind of wanted to tease a little bit. I alluded to it yesterday in some comments. Nevada has been the beneficiary far more than the beneficiary as it comes to sharing wildlife resources. I just quickly pulled out a list of species that we've received from other states or other places, including chukar, mountain quail, snowcock, turkey, pronghorn, elk, California bighorn sheep, Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep, Rocky Mountain goats. We've shared a number of sage. Historically, we've shared rabbits with Washington years ago, and we've shared some of our desert bighorn sheep. This is an opportunity to help create some redundant populations, assist some recovery efforts in a nearby state, and looking at our rabbit abundance and population distribution. This is something that we've determined really brought our pygmy banks. I've been working on that.
That's terrible.
Is that
Terrible. I mean,
I was encouraged to say. Well, I said it at leadership, and they said, well, "You have to say that at a commission meeting." So, darn it.
We should talk offline as to what you just said.
Okay. You think they set me up, huh?
I don't think they have your back. I'll tell you that.
This is one of those things that I think falls under our normal operational details. But I think anytime we are receiving or sharing wildlife, it's good to be as transparent as possible. So we want you to be aware of it. We're seeking the support and endorsement of the mission. As it says, up to 30 pygmy rabbits. It's not a huge ask, but anytime we're receiving wildlife, we just want to do so as transparently as possible. And with that, turn it over to Diversity Division Administrator Jennifer Newmark, who will tell us just a little bit about the request and maybe be able to answer any questions about the biology. I will say that pygmy rabbits are a game species in Nevada that are managed by the game division per se, but due to the current vacancy in the game division administrator position and Ms. Mark's familiarity with pygmy rabbits, we've put her in this position to be able to answer some of those questions and provide a little bit more detail.
Thank you.
Good morning, Jennifer, Wildlife Division Administrator. And earlier we received a request from the state of Washington to translocate to 30 pygmy rabbits to augment their semi-wild program that they have up there. As Director Wiley has mentioned, we have translocated pygmy rabbits to them in the past between 2011 and 2013, along with Utah and Wyoming. So they have a really close population of pygmy rabbits in Washington, so low that they needed to enter into a breeding program to help augment their population. We provided those initial rabbits to them. Over the course of the last several years, they've produced over 1,000 juveniles that have been released to the wild, so it has been a really successful program. They were holding their animals in permanent enclosures, and they have had some very significant impacts over the last several years, and also the areas that been releasing juveniles to has been impacted by wildfires. So they have put some changes in place. They have identified a couple of new recovery areas that are hopefully a little more isolated from the wildfire threat, and they've developed some mobile enclosures to help with the disease issues. However, their population is low enough that they need additional individuals to help augment and increase their program success. In Nevada, our pygmy rabbits are the abundance and trends of our populations are complex. Depends on where they are in the state as to how stable they are. And we have been in a long-term research project with the University of Nevada, Reno to really look at those populations, understand what their abundance is and how they're doing, what are the factors that are influencing that abundance and trend. But this request to translocate individuals, it does not, the department does not feel that it will significantly impact our populations or in any way put a threat on our species here in Nevada. So we will be, the biologists will be working with Washington over the next several months to identify specific areas that they'll be trapping individuals and translocating. And as I say, we'll obviously be looking at the sites that have more stable populations, and we don't believe there'll be any significant impacts to our species. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Any questions for Ms. Newmark or Secretary Wasley on the request for the 30 pygmy rabbits?
My only question was about the disease that they have. Is that what it is called? What that do they?
It's a disease, and I'm not really familiar with it. It's a disease that's related and passed through feces. By having those permanent enclosures, they just had a large buildup of feces within the areas that was exposing rabbits. That by having these mobile enclosures and being able to allow for significant accumulation from the feces, they're able to control for that disease. So basically, when they're getting disease, they can pick up the mobile enclosure and they can move it in an area that does not have it.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Chairman. One quick one. For some reason, I have in the back of my mind that there was, I don't remember if it was pike or pygmy rabbits, where there were issues with the genetic diversity, and I thought that was in Nevada where some of the wild population had deformities. We were noticing deformities. I mean, it's been a long time, but do you recall anything like that?
We have been looking at the diversity of our genetics in the state, and we definitely have. That's part of the component that we've been working with University of Nevada, Reno, and so there's populations that are genetically very diverse from other populations, specifically in the western portion of the state compared to the east. One of the reasons that Washington is keen to get rabbits from pygmy or from Nevada is because our genetic diversity is similar to theirs. I'm not aware of any like genetic mutations or issues that has been discovered from it. If other game folks that have more information.
I just in the back of my mind from it's been a long time, but the point is that you know by swapping critters and stuff, you're helping prevent that. You're trying to preclude some of that from happening, keeping first, and you're not. So I appreciate that their efforts, and I'm glad we're not in their shoes with regards to that. I guess he's endangered or threatened, so they've got other issues. So it's pretty straightforward.
Commissioner Barnes.
I thought I saw somewhere, I think it was Lander that had some concerns with this. And I understand that, you know, we have a population. But what are the trends for the pygmy rabbits? You alluded to the trends, you feel like stable, but what are the trends from the rabbits?
We have had long-term concern over pygmy rabbits in the state because we know that they're a sagebrush obligate species, and you know we've talked several times here about you know, wildfire and cheatgrass invasions, and from that large landscape component, there is a concern that their habitat is fragmented. But there are only populations that can stand taking these species, you know, 30 animals out of it. And as I said, it depends on where you are in the state. So there are some areas more impacted by habitat loss than others. And so, you know, I can say that there's a declining trend or an up across the board. It really depends on where you're at.
But overall, you'd say we're stable.
I feel like we're most stable, if that's a wishy-washy answer.
Any other questions before public comment? Keel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we do the trap of the pygmy rabbits in Nevada, or should we be looking into that? In the state of Nevada, have we or should we be doing trap and transplant of pygmy rabbits from one area to another with the state?
In our state?
Correct.
I don't think that we are at level of detail yet where we are needing to augment populations in particular areas, but certainly if there's ever a need in the future, you know, having methodology that's been collected in Washington will only help us in the future to do that kind of action.
Thank you.
Commissioner Olmberg.
Yeah, not a question, but just a comment. I mean, with wildlife, we're all in the same. You know, it's all one big picture of all the states, and I think we all have to keep in mind that we have to support each other and lead them back to our own side. Full support.
Okay. This is an action item. Is there any public comment in Elko?
No comment in Elko.
Any comment in Reno?
Yes, Roman, stand by.
One right here. Hello, this is Karen Taylor, Washoe County resident. I want to say thank you to the commissioners' questions and for the presentation by Ms. Newmark. Most of my questions were answered through the commissioners' questions and her presentation. I'm very glad Nevada can help with diversity, and I'm certainly not against it. But I know that sharing rabbits is certainly not the same as sheep. Wild sheep live on a range, possibly feed someone's family. Washington has extensive fur trapping, and although pygmy rabbits may or may not be the target animal, like in Nevada, we certainly don't discern, based on the non-target data that's presented to the public, of what kind of rabbit is in the trap. And in my experience in Nevada, when to trappers, that a lot of as I am, we're not even sure what a pygmy rabbit looks like half the time. So I know that these rabbits will be for breeding, but progeny are subject to be either target or non-target for trapping. So my questions are, what is done in Washington to mitigate trapping of rabbits? Is this even a factor, actually? And the question is, can the study from UNR on pygmy rabbits be made public? Thank you.
Any additional comment in Reno?
No in Reno. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. With public comment here in Los Angeles.
Commissioners, for the record, Fred Volz. Picture someone arbitrarily taking you and your family members against your will to a new environment and expecting a positive outcome under unfamiliar and unsafe conditions. Washington State's for pygmy rabbits admits a litany of errors in how they handled their previous breeding efforts to prevent extinction of their population. The wildfire problems, unsanitary conditions were allowed to fester an extended period of time with excessive feces present to contaminate soil. The breeding pens were not properly maintained or moved in a timely manner. The city ran rampant through the contained rabbit population without effective treatment protocols. A second unexplained population decline occurred per the letter request. Climate conditions in the Columbia River Basin vary tremendously from Nevada. Drastic differences in elevation where pygmies live, considerably more rainfall and snow than Nevada, and considerably less sunshine than Nevada. None of these variants are assessed in the project request letter or the project narrative. Several unanswered questions from the request letter. Will these miniature rabbits be successfully adapt to any material climate variation versus what they know living in whatever part of Nevada they would originate? Second, is it responsible to give stewards of wildlife more opportunities to kill more wildlife under the supposed care through ineptness? What will Washington State be doing differently going forward during the breeding if they receive the Nevada rabbits? What assurances will Nevadans have that pygmy rabbits will be treated appropriately? No one has asked questions and no one has volunteered any answers. This exchange did not occur given the lack of adequate due diligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Volz. Any additional public comment?
Scott Torres, Lander County Cab. Our cab discussed last meeting. We know of several different ranchers who have had their BLM or forest services altered due to decline in the pygmy rabbit. Our cab would like the state board to vote no to send the rabbits to send them to Washington. But if NDOW board to send the rabbits, Washington should. Our cab would like you to put a stipulation on it like them to send the rabbits back as soon as the breeding program is successful.
Any additional public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. Comments or questions, or I don't know if Secretary Wasler or Ms. Newmark to address any concerns expressed by members of the public.
I'll take a step of them. What we're talking about is up to 30 pig rabbits. I can remember years ago attending a National Wildlife Society meeting that was held in and there was a researcher that came in and expressed the dire state of pygmy rabbits and suggested that Nevada be a captive breeding program, and kind of sounded the alarms. And so the Department of Wildlife immediately began investigating historic pygmy rabbit territories. And due to their crepuscular, dusk and their secretive nature, you don't realize how abundant they are until you start looking for them. 20 years later, and doing some research with the University of Nevada, we've learned quite a bit about them. We've substantiated that they're far more abundant than what was thought 20 years ago. And so relative to the request of 30 rabbits, the department doesn't have any concern whatsoever about population level impacts, the removal of 30 animals. Relative to the conditions, I think interesting. There's a practice known as coprophagia, which is when an animal consumes its own feces. One of the well-known species to exhibit this behavior, and in times of low scarcity, they consume, ingest feces, digest them, and get nutrients out of them. To suggest somehow it's irresponsible by Washington. Washington's learning. This is a captive breeding program to keep that population extant in their state, and to suggest that it was intentional, responsible. or unsanitary. We're talking about an animal that consumes its own feces. So, certainly it was logical for Washington to assume that there wouldn't be harm in them existing, in some of their own feces, since they eat their own feces. So they're learning as they go. Their intentions are, I don't think anybody can argue with the intentions of the state of Washington. As to the potential impacts of incidental take-through trappers, I would suggest that those trapping activities could be more effective in being predators of pygmy rabbits than incidental take could result in. So I think there's a lot of speculation here for an incredibly small number of animals that can create redundant populations of an imperiled species that in the eastern portion is very similar to Nevada in terms of precipitation, vegetation. We're talking about a sagebrush obligate. Animals only live in these particular habitats. So we're not talking about putting pygmy rabbits on the Olympic Peninsula. We're talking about in the sagebrush desert, very similar to what they have here. Genetic research has substantiated the similarities between the species as they occur in Nevada and the area where they would be released, and the animals breeding in Washington. So I certainly, and I guess the last point, as far as permit modifications relative to pygmy rabbits, I'm unaware of any permit modification as a result of pygmy rabbits. As I mentioned earlier, they are a game species. Particularly if a species is determined to be as abundant as rabbits are to warrant or justify, likely that it would also be a species through which permit modifications could be justified or made. It's certainly possible that they are identified, I believe, in our State Wildlife Action Plan, species of conservation need, and so as and I don't know their classification status, land or forest. Certainly, again, as I say, reductions in sagebrush that we've seen in Nevada, we are paying attention to their status and trends. I'm not aware of any permit modification, and those modifications, I guess I find it difficult to imagine that it would adjust stock as a result of presence or absence of pygmy rabbits. But, I think that includes the questions or the concerns raised, but if Jennifer has any additional comments, I'd like those too, Mr.
Yeah, okay. She had no. So I would also note from the state of Washington that it was not just a disease event. They noted that in 2017, a wildfire destroyed a breeding enclosure, temporary release trends resulting in the loss of 85 pygmy rabbits. They also note that during the winter, it was a combined effect of some disease and fire stress that may have resulted in more mortality. I note here that the Columbia Basin population is listed as endangered, both federal, I believe, state of Washington law. Given those factors, here the concerns expressed by the public, but if we're not prepared to give up to 30 rabbits, a neighboring state that has helped us and worked with us cooperatively on other issues, given these factors, if it would impact Nevada negatively, or we thought that would be helpful to the state of Washington, I would be confident the department would tell us that. I'm not hearing that, and with the explanations received from the state of Washington and a number of complicating factors, it seems that we can play a small part in hopefully helping the state of Washington with an endangered species by delivering 30 pygmy rabbits. So it would be in support of us authorizing the department. Commissioner Hubbs?
Just as a side to, in regard to rabbits, there's not a lot, and they are, I mean, we see rabbits out and about, but to actually, I had a period of time in which we took in cottontail rabbits, babies that had their nest abandoned, and not knowing really what to do with them and not wanting to leave them, we took them to the vet. we were informed too at that time that they need their mother's fecal matter in order to coat their intestines to allow them to digest the type of food source that they have. And so it's an important part of their biology. And so the risk for these little babies that we were leaving with the vet was the lack of having the fecal matter in and of itself.
Any other comments, questions? I'll then make a motion that the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners approve Washington's request for up to 30 pygmy rabbits, and that they work with Washington to fulfill that request. Clear on the motion? Motion by Chair Johnston, seconded by Commissioner Barnes. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. I'm having a request for a quick break, so we will reconvene at 9:50.